This is the place I'm currently working in. The manual is attaching the gear door to the fuselage, and there's the hinge, and here's the doors, and I just put a 2-ply bid as those instructions detailed, and I'm at this point, this is the outside of one of them, and while I have them here and I can stand over them and work on them, I think it makes more sense to finish them to the primer coat now instead of trying to do it upside down. So there's kind of a shot of my shop with all the parts and the rack. So here's what's happening in here. I was filling up the hydraulic system and testing it out. Those are the batteries to run the pump. I felt at the bottom of the pump sits right in here, and this is the pump, and it's up, and here's the reservoir, and it's down, and on the bottom side of the reservoir is a stud that comes out. This thing, I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was really ridiculous to put an O-ring at the bottom of this hydraulic tank, thinking that it could fail, and then you would have a big problem, especially while you were flying. Well, I reached under there and I felt some small particles, and sure enough, the O-ring at the bottom had deteriorated, and then that led me to take this thing apart, and I'm also going to replace this O-ring here. It seems to be in fairly good shape, but why not start out with a new one? Now, while I was dealing with that, I only had a small area here covered in this. This is a Novalock epoxy that will keep the hydraulic fluid from absorbing into the carbon fiber should there ever be a leak. So when I took that out, I expanded this area much greater. On the subject of the Novalock, I coated the bottom of the fuselage here. You can see all that gray is the Novalock to keep hydraulic fluid from absorbing into the carbon fiber should there be any leak. Rather, I should say, when there is a leak. Now, one of the things that I didn't do is this needs to be ground back and 2-ply bid. This is where the hinge goes for the door. So all the way along there, need to grind off the Novalock and apply a 2-ply bit. Here's my little collection of Dremel tools. I've gone through about 3 Dremels already, and I was working on a Velocity. So this was a really cool piece of mahogany at one time, but dust gets in between there and you can't clean it out. So probably would be better to have some trays like this to put everything in. So I have this little stool here, and mechanic stool, and it's adjustable, so I can adjust it to the height I need to put the 2-ply bid right there on that far opening. You can see I have my shop vac set up, and when I grind with the Dremel, I suck the dust and debris that comes off with the shop vac instead of letting my lungs find it. So I'm setting it up to grind that out. Also, I move this cradle up and down. I use a engine hoist and position it where I want, and then move the cradle with some heavy-duty foam under there. And I also use a strapping. It's a tow used for car towing. Since I can spread the weight over quite an area, I use that in conjunction with this, with the wood as kind of a backup, so I can move it up and down and position it back and forth. This set of straps here is what I use to pull up the tail section with the engine hoist, and I locate it where the bulkhead is, so the weight's distributed even more with that strapping. So that seems to work very well. I caution people who are using batteries to directly drive, or actually I use the relay to power the pump. And I thought it would be very clever, since it drained the batteries quickly, is to leave the battery charger attached to the batteries while the pump was running, charging the system. And what I managed to do is that pump draws so much amperage that it burnt up the battery charger. So parts of it don't work. I have a 30 amp fuse in line, so the hydraulic pump is protected. I think it can draw as much as 50 amps, but that's the largest fuse that I had.